Okay. So today we're supposed to have a speaker from the College of Business and Learning Lab, one of the tutors there. Are they here yet? Okay. This week we'll cover section 1.1 and 1.3. The weekly checklist is already up. I put it up yesterday. Um, and the MyLabs problems are up there, so you can start those. If you haven't finished anything like the MyLabs homework chapter O and R or the introduce yourself, you can still get those done. Um, since this is online, I won't take off for it being late. You just lose your attendance points. Any questions so far? So today we'll cover section 1.1, Wednesday we'll cover section 1.3, and then Friday will be a group assignment. You'll work on it together in class and you'll turn it in at the end of the class or whenever you get done. If you get done early, then you can turn it in and leave. You'll just attach it just like you would the syllabus homework. Any questions? Is the speaker here yet from the College of Business and Learning? Okay. We will just start at least the definitions and then I'll just keep checking if they've come. So I had told them 5 after, but is there any questions on anything so far? Okay. Okay. These are the problems we're going to go over today, and will put them up with the recording so you have them there. The first part with section 1.1 is a couple definitions. The first one is function. A function, the definition is for every x value, for every x value, there is only one y value. So the x value does not repeat. The domain is the x values, and it's the independent variable. Where the range is the y values, and it's the dependent variable because it depends on what x is. There's a lot of different ways of looking at a function, but if we're looking at the graph, one way of testing if it's a function is a vertical line test. If you can draw one vertical line that hits the graph in more than one position or more than one spot, it is not a function. So if we think about a parabola, and if we draw vertical lines, can we draw a vertical line that will hit the graph in more than one spot? You want to think of the vertical lines. Notice no matter where I put the vertical line, I'm only hitting this line in one spot. So this is a function. Any questions so far? How about a circle? Is a circle a function? Anyone?
No.
Correct, it's not. You could draw a vertical line that only hits at one spot, but not very many of them. Here is one where we're hitting more than one point here. So it's definitely not a function. A cubic graph looks like this. Is the cubic graph a function? Anyone?
Yes.
Yes. Try one more. Is this graph a function?
No.
Exactly. There are some you can draw that only intersect, but you only need one line. If it hits more than one point, then it's not a function. Any questions on the vertical line test? Okay. Is the tutor from the Business Learning Lab here? Okay. Another way of looking at a function, or whether it is a function or not, is to look at the individual points. So if we had this set of points and we wanted to decide if it's a function or not, Now what we want to make sure is the x doesn't repeat, because if your x gives you two different y values, then it's not a function. Now it doesn't matter if it goes the other way. So if we look at these x values, we have a 2, a 5, a 6, and a -2. So the x is not repeating, this is a function. It doesn't matter that this y repeated. They could all be 3's, but as long as your x does not repeat and give you a different y value, it's a function. Would this one be a function?
No.
Correct. Because the x value gives two different y values, it's not a function. So looking at the individual points or the list of points is another way. You can also look at the points on a graph. If they plotted the points onto a graph, you can tell if it's a function by the vertical line test. If you can draw a vertical line at each point and only hit one of the points, then it's a function. So this would be a function because each vertical line only hits one of the points. Now if we add one more point, if it's where it will intersect the vertical line that we already have, then this would not be a function because I can draw this vertical line and hit 2. So this x value, if it's 1, has two different y values. So you can plot the points or look at points on a graph and see if it's a function. When you're looking at just the points, this is called a scatter plot. Because the points are just scattered. But if two of them line up in a vertical line, then it's not a function. Any questions on that one? Okay, another way is to put it in a table. And this is our x value and this is our y. Would this be a function?
No.
No. The reason it's not a function is because one x value, the number 1, gives us two different y values. So it's not a function. It's not because the 5's are repeating or the -5's. It's because these two 1's gave us two different answers. Any questions on that? Let's look at from the problems here. Number 1, I'll write the table real quick. 6.
Sorry, I didn't have Karen.
Um, this is a function because notice that the x's do not repeat. And when they're talking about an input or an output, the input is your independent variable, and the output is the dependent variable. Because it depends on what your input is. So on number or part A, is -6 an input or an output?
Input.
Input. X is always your input and Y is your output. Is f of -6 an input or an output?
Output.
Right. When it's written f of -6 or f of x and y are interchangeable. And so what this is a y value. F of -6 gives you a y value. So this is an output. Any questions on that? When we're stating the domain or the range, when it's a list of values, you set it in what's called a set notation, and it uses a script parenthesis. And so you would use a script parenthesis. Domain is the x values. And you would just list the x values. Now, some things might want you to put them in order. That is up to you. I wouldn't take off if it wasn't in order. But that would be up to you. So we could list them -6, -2, 0, 1, 4. And these ones do go in order, at least x does. The range would be the y values. Now, one thing you do want to do, if it does repeat, then you wouldn't want to write it more than once. So if there was 2 4s, I'd only put a 4 once. And it's up to you if you want to put them in order. I think I got them. Any questions on that? Oops. In this one, they want you to explain why the relationship describes y as a function of x. It kind of just wants you to write the definition of a function. Y is a function of x because for every x, there is only one y. Any questions on that? So for this one, it wants us to find the outputs. What it's saying is when x is a -6, what is y? That's all this is telling you. It's saying if x is -6, what does the y value equal? So what would f of -6 equal? Anyone? And you can type it into the chat if you don't want to say. 4. Because -6 gives us 4. Any questions on that? So what is f of 0? Anyone? Yep. 8, exactly. Because when we're looking at x0, the function is 8. Any questions on that one? Find x when f of x equals 3. So if f of x equals 3, what did x equal? Anyone? Yeah. So in this case, we're given what f of x is, or what y equals, and we want to go backwards and find x. So when f of x is 3, x is 1. Any questions on that? H, if f of x equals 0, what does x equal?
4.
Yep. When we have 0 for f of x is 4. Any questions on those? Number 2. F of x equals x plus 2 over x minus 5. So in this case, they're giving us an equation instead of a table, and we need to find values. Now, since we don't have the table, in order to find it, we need to plug the values in. So if we're finding f of 4, that's our x value. So we plug 4 in. And 4 plus 2 is 6 over a -1. And it will reduce 6 divided by -1 is a -6. Any questions on that? Okay, go ahead and try B, C, and D. So for B, what do we get for f of 0? Anyone? Getting 2 over negative 5. There we go, someone wrote it. Now, the negative can be written when you only have one term on top and bottom. The negative can be down in the bottom, out in front, or on top. All three answers are correct. Any questions on that? Looks like my light's on. How about f of negative 2? What did we get? 0. We have negative 2 plus 2 over negative 2 minus 5, which gives us 0 over 7, which is 0. Any questions on that one? How about D? What did we get for f of 5? Undefined. Does everyone agree with that? When we plug in the 5, we get 7 over 0. And we know that we cannot divide by 0, so it's undefined. Or no solution. Or does not exist. Any one of the three is fine. D and E means does not exist. We'll use that term a lot. Any questions on that? It is possible to get 0 over 0. It just means there was a common factor that wasn't reduced. And we'll get into that in later chapters. Any questions on those? E. Is y a function of x? Well, we kind of know it's a function of x because it was given right here. Y equals f of x, so y is a function of x. So y is a function of x. But we also know it's a function because no matter what value I plug in here, I'm only going to get one answer out. So for every x, I'm only getting one y. But when they're asking you these ones, because they'll do them with different variables, go back and look at the way it's written. So if they had is equals. So A is a function of B. Any questions on those? The revenue from sales of mountain bobbleheads, or mountain men bobbleheads, is R of X equals 12. X, where X is the number of bobbleheads sold. Now, a lot of times when you're working with the function, using a variable that helps you know what it is a good idea. R is revenue. And it said X was the number of bobbleheads sold. So it's a good idea to either use variables that go with your words, like you could have put a B here for bobblehead, but R for revenue, C for cost, P for profit. Those are used a lot. And this one's revenue. What is R of 100? So just like in the last one, first thing we need to do, we were given X, so we plug that value in and see what we get. We get 1,200. 100 was the number of bobbleheads, and we know our answer is revenue. To explain it then, 100 bobbleheads gives $1,200 in revenue. Any questions on that? Part B. What is the revenue from the sale of 2,500 bobbleheads? And write it in functional notation. So go ahead and do that one. What do we get for 2,500? Anyone?
30,000.
30,000. Now, when it says to write it in functional notation, they mean to write it like this. So R of 2,500 equals 12 times the 2,500, which we said was 30,000. I believe on MyLabs it puts R and then leaves a blank for you to fill in, and then it leaves a square blank here. So you just plug in the two. You put the 2,500 and the 30,000. So if we sell 2,500 bobbleheads, we make $30,000 in revenue. Any questions on B? Let's see. space. Was there any questions on B? For C. If the revenue is 5,616, how many bobbleheads were sold? We know R of X equals 12X. So each time you read a sentence or equation, you want to see what they're giving you and then decide where you need to plug it in. They're telling us the revenue is 5,616 and how many bobbleheads were sold. So that means the number of bobbleheads was the X value. So that means we're looking for this value. We were given revenue, and the revenue was 5,616. So you always want to read the sentence and see what it's giving you and what it's asking for. In this case, we were looking for bobbleheads. We were given revenue. Any questions on why I plugged it here? Okay. So then we're solving for X. Since this is being multiplied, how can we get rid of the 12? Anyone? Divide, exactly. We want to divide by 12. Always do the opposite. So if you're multiplying, divide. If you're adding, subtract. And what you do to one side, you need to do to the other. And so X is you're getting 468. And X was bobbleheads. So we need to sell 468 bobbleheads to make $5,616 in revenue. Any questions on that? An electric utility company determines the monthly bill by charging 85.2 cents per kilowatt hour used plus a base charge of $25.45 per month. Thus, the monthly charge is given by the function. So that means the function is the monthly charge. And that is equal to 0.85 W plus 25.45. Notice this was the fixed cost because it said a base charge. So no matter how many kilowatt hours you use, you're paying $25.45 to start with. And then it goes up 85. I think I dropped the 2. Yeah. Oh, they dropped. No, they have it in there. I forgot my 2 when I rewrote it. But 0.852 kilowatts. So each additional kilowatt hour, it goes up approximately 85 cents. And we'll talk about that a lot more in the next section. This one's just plugging in the values. It says W is kilowatt hours. So W is the number of kilowatt hours. The whole function, or your Y value, is the monthly charge. Find f of 500 and explain what it means. So what do we get for when we find f of 500? That looks a little bit large. Did anyone get something a little smaller? 2 times 5. 500's going in for the W. Just make sure I plugged it in right. Right. There we go. I got 451.45. Yeah. I think if you got the 24, you might not have had this 2 here. Nope, I don't know. Is everyone getting the 451.45 now? So we're plugging it in here. These two are multiplied, and then you add this one, and you should be able to enter it all at once in your calculator. This is our kilowatt hours. This whole thing is the monthly charge. So that means this is our monthly charge. When 500 kilowatt hours are used, the monthly charge is $451.45. And you do need to answer these in sentences. You can't just say 451.45. I want it explained. And it says explain what it means. By explain what it means, it's just the sentence. These don't need too much more than that yet. Any questions on that one? What is the charge if 720 kilowatt hours are used? So if they're giving us 720 kilowatt hours, are we plugging it in for W or F of W? Anyone? W, because it's kilowatt hours, and kilowatt hours is W. The whole function is the monthly charge. So it goes in for W. And what do we get when we plug that in? Anyone?
At 638 with 89 cents.
Exactly. 638.89. So if we use 720 kilowatt hours, our monthly charge will be $638.89. There any questions on that? Positive. Did the tutor come from the Business Learning College? Or is he or she here right now?